Patreon.com/the Walk-Off Podcast. $4 a month gets you in there.
We just watched Vladdy leave that Friday game. He has since announced that he is going to be opting out of the WBC. Everyone's saying it's precautionary. There's no structural damage. Have you heard anything more on the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. injury?
Yeah, that's about it for now. That it wasn't anything structural, which is the good news. Mm-hmm. But when you are looking at a knee, number one, that's not great. Speaking from a twinge of experience, a knee for a big man doesn't make it any better. There's a lot coming down on that, especially there's a lot when you're turning a base and running. That's, I believe, where that injury happened. Vladdy had I believe it was a left knee, the other knee issue back in 18 or 19 as a prospect coming up. And it matters which part of the knee. Are we talking about above the knee with the patella? Are we talking about inside the knee, below it, behind it? It's different for every guy. So we will see at this point. In a perfect world, he just needs a bit of rest, a week or so. We'll see, and he can get back in there. But if he has to fully shut down for a couple of weeks, then ramp back up, obviously you're not keeping Vladdy on the bench. But is he going to be totally sharp for pitching on opening day? It's tough timing, brutal timing, because he's a guy who really cares about playing internationally, representing the Dominican Republic on a team that is stupid good. Like I can't. Even a guy who does not watch baseball outside of work, will probably turn on a DR game just to see that working together.
Yeah.
But it's tough for him. Hopefully a short-term thing, but yeah, nothing good happens in spring training. That's really my philosophy. Nothing good happens for those 45 days I'm in the state of Florida.
So fingers crossed on that. And it is kind of good to see that there's no structural damage. So you keep your fingers crossed. And it's funny when it comes to the World Baseball Classic, honestly, man, I do really enjoy it. I honestly, truly get excited for it. That said, when it comes to Blue Jays players, I would prefer they opt out every single time.
Right. I don't know what the answer is for the WBC. I wish I had one, because in hockey, when you played at the end of a season, so, okay, these are just guys who got eliminated from the playoffs, sure. But in baseball, you're dealing with pitchers who are ramping up so carefully. Now, 40 years ago, well, who cares? They're throwing 300 innings anyways because they're throwing 89. Now, every single pitcher in Major League Baseball is doing something that the human body is not supposed to do, period. So doing more of that doesn't work, but I hope it can work out. I'm sure it'll continue to evolve, but I love watching it because you see different styles of play.
Totally.
You can see a team like the DR go up against Japan, a Japanese team much more focused on hitting for contact, for speed, always have impeccable fundamentals. And then you'll see them go up against a DR or a Venezuela who play much more power-based, big swing. There's a lot of energy to that game. So seeing those different baseball cultures go up against one another, and it's when we call baseball America's game, go to a baseball game anywhere else. Talk to any of these players who go play winter ball, and they think, oh my God, that is how baseball is supposed to happen. I love talking to the guys who go down and play in the Dominican Winter League, like Nate Pearson was one, and all of a sudden you are in the bottom of the ninth. There are people banging drums. There are just full bottles of liquor in the crowd. Like, it is a good time. So hopefully we see a lot of that with the players at their best. My worry is, and knock on every piece of wood within sight, but the worry is that someone like a Shohei Ohtani blows a hamstring, something like that. So really my hope for the WBC is everyone comes out of it healthy, because it can be so good for the game internationally. But it's a delicate thing if a real superstar has something happen.
And it would just create more people opting out in years to come. It's funny because, right, it's just going to make teams cling to their stars tighter, right? You don't want to risk those injuries. And it is funny because even though I would rather see every Blue Jays player opt out, when it comes to Jose Berrios, he's a guy I'm actually super excited that he's pitching for Puerto Rico, and I'm hoping he builds some confidence, and I'm hoping that he goes into this season feeling like the 2021 Jose Berrios. And I know it's too early here, Keegan, to even ask you this, but this is what we're at right now in early March. Where are you on Jose Berrios, and do you expect more out of him than we saw last season?
He better. This point last year, him getting back to, and I think that a lot of people exhausted themselves on Jose Berrios last year because it was a particularly frustrating brand of struggle. If you watched Yusei Kikuchi, you would say, oh, that's not going very well. I understand. That's bad. If you walk through your living room and watch one inning of Jose Berrios, it looks okay. Like, he wasn't hitting guys in the head. He was not losing the strike zone. But his fastball that was supposed to be on the edge might drift an inch over, and people were hammering him. So for Berrios, it was particularly frustrating because for 5 years, he had been one of the most consistent players in all of baseball. That's why you hand him that contract. And I'm a big believer in not rewriting history. If I loved the contract at the time, that's got to be my stance for the whole time. You know, you can't go back and rewrite. I thought it was a fantastic extension. Berrios last year, I think, really took it to heart. He's a guy that cares a lot. Like, he's not there just to get his money and go on, whatever. He is a guy that's very introspective and really cared. Sometimes, I don't want to say too much, but sometimes it might have gotten to him, I believe, last year. And John Schneider said as much, that he had discussed it with the staff, with the players, apologizing for not playing his role, which he didn't need to do, but it shows you the type of guy he is. So he's also someone who cares very much about playing internationally. Like a lot of these Latin players do, coming from their countries. There is much more pride in terms of baseball internationally than we would get here in Canada or the US. It's a very important thing in baseball culture. So for him to make a run with Puerto Rico, I think would be very important. He would be at the forefront of that if it can happen. But any way to get his confidence back, because this is not mechanical. If he had have dropped from 95 to 91 last year, well, yikes, then you're scared. Everything looked the same. He was just getting smacked. So I think for him, it's probably as important as almost any player in this WBC from an MLB standpoint, Berrios.
It's interesting for fans, because that was the thing that killed me about Jose Berrios is you'd watch him and I couldn't really pinpoint what was wrong, right? Like with Kikuchi, you're like, well, he's not hitting his spots and he's shying away from that killer fastball. But Berrios, I was like, why?
Yeah. Jose got caught in a real back and forth of adjustments last year. Kikuchi too, his just didn't look as good, I guess. But with Berrios, every single start, we would hear about an adjustment of where he was standing on the mound, how he was delivering. If you're talking about adjustments like that in the middle of an MLB season, you're toast. You're absolutely toast. Because, of course, every pitcher is going to make small adjustments, but actual big adjustments to how you're throwing the baseball, good luck. Because MLB hitters are going to be one step ahead of you the entire time, if that's what you're doing. And I think Berrios, once he gets back to who he is, if he can be let's say a 3.9 ERA guy, he's durable, so you know he's going to throw 170 innings. That automatically flips this Blue Jays rotation to one of the best in baseball with Manoah, Gossman, Bassett. We'll see what happens number 5 with Kikuchi. But if you have Berrios doing that, of those 4 pitchers, you can almost write down 680, 700 innings between those 4 guys. And all of a sudden that bullpen becomes something you build based on what you want it to look like, not something that you're trying to patch holes and scramble with. So the effects of that could be pretty huge.
The length that we could, again, knock on wood, see out of this rotation, it is the best length we've probably seen in half a decade, I'd say. Yeah.